This is Inspirational Women, a weekly series shining the spotlight on female trailblazers making a true difference in our community. Once again, here is Kate Daniels.
Summer is also a great reading time, and Ava Miles has a fun and interesting new book that is such a delight, The Hockey Experiment. So you don't need to necessarily be a hockey fan to enjoy this rom-com because there's such great relationship experiences. Best friend, a new beau, family. Ava has great life experiences that make this book extra special. Ava Miles, good morning, and so wonderful to speak to you, really for about halfway around the world.
Yeah, in France. Thank you so much for having me. It's always wonderful to meet a woman who is an ambassador for other women. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, I am privileged, I guess, that I get to be that, and the fact that I get to have these wonderful conversations, and we're going to get insights into your life. And can I say I'm really in awe and overwhelmed by all that you've done in your life and you continue to do. And as we speak, you've just come in from a swim. So that's all about balance, as we had earlier kind of mentioned about having the balance and really taking care of ourselves.
Absolutely. I think it's really important as women. I know it wasn't something that I was taught growing up. I was from a small town in the Midwest, the oldest of 6 children, and there was always never enough time for the women in my family to take care of themselves. And so when I was in my 30s, I remember another woman telling me, because I was really burnt out, she said, after I'd come back from a trip overseas, you should be kind to yourself. And I literally, she walked away and I thought, I don't even know what that means. I had to ask other women. It took 5 women for another woman to actually be able to tell me what she thought that meant. And we were mystified. It was so funny. So I think that's hopefully changing. But it's certainly something that I think is important because as human beings, we do need to refuel and be recharged and not giving all the time and receiving. And that's a gift.
It is a gift. And regardless of what it is that we find ourselves doing, what our life journey is, our path, our purpose, and I'm going to say I'm just so in awe of the things that you have done. Really kind of at the top of the list is that you've negotiated in war zones and brought people together, I guess, to have conversations and aim for peace, which the world constantly is in need of, right, Ava?
Yeah, back in the day, I thought, well, that's a job description that will never go out of style. For sure. Unfortunately, it's also very dangerous and heartbreaking work.
Yes.
But also very inspiring when it does come together. So in terms of communities, in the Congo, for example, rebuilding villages, helping communities come back together who had been displaced because of serious conflict. How do you negotiate when someone's taken over your house, for example, or your farm? And what types of projects do people want to do? And so really local conflict, and then, some obviously at higher level conflict. It just kind of depended on the country. It was a privilege and a gift, and it taught me a lot about people and life. So I'm always very, very grateful for that time in my life.
And hearing some of the pieces of what fall into the novel that I just had the privilege of being introduced to you by, The Hockey Experiment. So, as you mentioned, working in the Congo, I thought, I see where some of that research that falls into this book comes from. Voila.
Voila. Yes. I thought it would be so fun to have 2 researchers who actually had just come back from the Congo, because it is a very fascinating place. And the person I dedicated the book to was a teacher, a cultural anthropologist out of Notre Dame University, who inspired me so much that I almost decided to do a PhD in it. And so this was a very lovely opportunity for me to feel that energy out and what that would have looked like. And so having them come back and talk about wanting to have, running water, for example, and electricity and a hamburger, I thought that was very relatable because it's very real as well.
And think about just really the very simple part of it, the simple needs that we have that can really fulfill us and probably bring us joy if we just take the time and focus on that.
Absolutely. And I think also the things that we take for granted, there's so many people around the world that don't have running water. I mean, when you think about it, it just is mind blowing, isn't it? And so that's something that I know I was always very aware of coming back and going back and forth between a developing country and obviously the United States when I was living there at the time. And so, like, I feel like that's something that, is not an experience that everybody has, to see that a lot of the world really doesn't live quite like people, for example, who actually are able to hear this, because that means that they have electricity for one, and then they actually have internet. So, I mean, or they have radio, however, they take it. So yeah, I thought it'd be fun to have people who were like fish out of water in some respect, these two culture anthropologists. And I had to drop in like that they'd seen pygmies, because when I saw pygmies in Congo, it's not something you ever forget. I mean, it was so incredible. And it was like, and so it was nice to get that into a book at last.
Yeah. It's just amazing how there's this wealth of lived experience, but taken from, a very professional space, work that you were doing. So I see how this really has evolved into your being this really prolific author, best-selling author. And it makes sense, because at first I was trying to think, like, how does this happen? But it's natural here too that it evolved for you. Did it? It feels that way.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it was also the happy thing that I cherished. I mean, it was like one of the few things that when I was overseas that, I didn't have electricity, I didn't have, internet. And so I'd be on my laptop with my battery after hours, because you didn't dare go out at night on some of these in some of these places. And so I would write just for myself, because it was kind of like a nice little place that I could get into mentally and emotionally, that would, sort of guide me through a night when there were bombs or tanks going down the street or what have you. And so one night when I was in Sierra Leone, I was working on another like piece that I really loved. And I was the only woman, I was the only person actually, but I was the woman in the hotel. And there were guerrillas outside of, not guerrillas, but military people outside of my hotel. They'd already broken into my room, broken the lock. And I knew that they were thinking about overrunning me. They were playing like rap music, and they were shooting their guns in the air, and they had like a fire in the garbage cans, very much like Blood Diamonds, if you've ever seen the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Connelly. Very, very good movie, by the way. And I thought, I could get kidnapped, I could get killed, I could get gang raped tonight. And I was like, I need to write myself a better life. And so I vowed that night to finish that first book, and to see if it was actually going to be good enough to be published. Because since I was a little kid, I thought, oh, wouldn't that be nice to be an author? Like coming from the small town Midwest, everyone thinks you're crazy for those types of ideas. You go to college, you get a career that's going to give you something, and you take care of yourself. Okay. And so, it ended up working out for me, when I left my career at the height of my career, people thought I was either the craziest person or I was like the bravest. And what's very interesting is now, with foreign aid being so reduced in the United States, all of my friends are losing their jobs. And so I had been a legend when I left the industry. I did this in 2013. And now I had just gone back to DC and saw friends, and they're all losing their jobs. And they're like, you were the smartest person, because they're like, like, you couldn't have seen this coming, however, but look, you don't have to worry about what we're worrying about. And I said, isn't that kind of an incredible thing to listen to your heart and end up here? Yes. In a better place for me personally, which is great. So,
and hopefully they realize, an aside, that is available to all of us. I like to look at these. We don't like terrible things happening in our lives, but how can we take this and really make it into something that's going to be better than what we had?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, to me, I call them soul breadcrumbs. And I feel like our soul gives us these signs. And then suddenly there are these little breadcrumbs that like show up for us. And it leads us down the path that we need to follow to find our happiness. I love Joseph Campbell, the great mythologist, his like, follow your bliss. It's such a beautiful, simple, and yet complex kind of like idea for a lot of people. And it's really simple. If we feel happy, and that was kind of how I felt. It was like when I wrote, I was happy. And that was suddenly something that was really a valuable piece in my life, as opposed to trying to, serve at the detriment of myself, like physically, mentally, emotionally, because that old job was very, very difficult, with PTSD and with lots of threats to yourself. And it took its toll. It didn't really have, much of a social life, even, in the States sometimes, because of like the complexities of it. And you were always on call. And so having like a happier life, which has been very much being an author. I mean, I'm living in France now, for crying out loud. I mean, I just been in Ireland, like it's been wonderful,
Was this what we might call a bucket list dream to live in France?
Yes, it has been for a long, long time. So was Ireland. And so after the lockdown in the United States with COVID, it just seemed like the perfect time to kind of like just do it. It was like, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for in terms of your happiness list? And so we just decided to go ahead and do it. And so 2 years in Ireland and now 3 years in France and continuing to go. And it's wonderful because the world is such a big, expansive place. And if you have a calling in your heart, go follow, go follow it.
and and you're not just saying these things, you're living it. So it comes from such an authentic place that this is really great. Just do it, right?
Yeah. I think we just, we have all these stories in our head, right, that tell us that we can't do things. I know that that's how, I had to like start, listening to something different. I still hear those at times, but then I'm like, let's not do that. Or, if you have fear about something and you really do want to do it, it's like you got to push through the fear somehow. My big fear, like I was just dealing with this week, is I started a soji screen to paint, and I've never painted on that large of a like 3-panel scale. And I was terrified, and I was like, because didn't think I could do it, and I was like, well, this is just silly. What am I doing? So I had to like push through it a few days. And I was like, I don't think I've ever felt that with a book, which is funny because a lot of writers have like anxiety about starting a novel. And I thought, well, isn't this funny that my anxiety is with painting? And I was like, well, there's great empathy now. Great. And not that I don't have empathy for fear, because I do. But I was like, okay, this is a nice opportunity to say, hey, I'm still growing, because we are all growing. And to stop, I think, is to like stop being a person and to stop living, like, why wouldn't we do that?
Right. Yes. In fact, that what you say about that, about the growing, is so important, because if we thought we'd arrived, well, okay, that must be the end of life. Really, if we've arrived, it's that growing, the pushing through and striving, I guess, that can be so constructive and illuminating to us.
Absolutely. I think it teaches us a lot about ourselves, and it teaches us a lot about the people that we kind of roll with, is how I call it. It's like, who are you surrounding yourself with? Because if you're not surrounding yourself with positive people who want to support your dreams and what's in your heart, you're going to have a real hard time. I know that I had to kind of look at that. I had someone tell me, like, every time I sat down with someone, they said, are you happy sitting down with them and going out with them? And I started to like realize I really wasn't sitting down with them for that. I wasn't happy. I was there for another reason. And I was like, when I started changing my entire like friendship circle and looking at my social circle, I was like, I haven't been doing this. And so you ask those deep questions and you find some interesting answers. And then it's like you start looking and calling in new people, and that's been very helpful, because I think it's important to have that kind of support for everyone.
This is so invaluable, Ava. I really appreciate you fashioning all of this into our conversation, because I feel that especially now when the world is in such turmoil, it's important to really become more self-aware and ask ourselves these questions and build on that, and not be really crushed by those outside forces, but realize our strength.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons I love Dr. Valentina Hargrove and like the Hawk experiment.
Yes.
I mean, not only does she have a best friend who is another woman who supports her, and she's known her since boarding school, and they went to cultural anthropology like school in Oxford. And so they have the same degree, they work in the same career. So they're besties, right? And they're professionally respect each other, but they also love each other as sisters. But I loved seeing that Val, who had kind of closed down after being a very successful junior Olympics figure skater, that she decided like that she was going to open up when she met the hero, and that the real experiment for her was the human experience, which is falling in love. And so the mental sort of part of it, of trying to figure out what it all means, because it's such a powerful experience, and it's often an experience that makes us feel a little uncomfortable, a little vulnerable, a little unhinged, but also exciting. And I really like that she's able to show to me like this very lovely arc of what it means to really feel that experience, and to sort of also grapple with it as a person and as something that transforms her. I thought it was just beautiful.
Oh, yes, it is. And I value the hockey experience, the hockey experiment, the book. it's so much more now having had this conversation with you to get some of the insights. I mean, that doesn't, but it explains a lot actually. So it's a great insight because I had wondered, like, why about hockey? Why are we doing the hockey experiment? Yeah, the tumblers are rolling in and it makes sense. And even just as a delightful summertime read, we're always looking for wonderful books to read during the summer. This is certainly one of them. And hockey, well, we're really right in the middle of Stanley Cup season, so it's totally relevant that way as well.
Yeah, I think hockey fans would think it was really funny that, the heroine is hired by her dad who owns a hockey team to basically create a motivational like study, that they might use to motivate the team to win the Stanley Cup, which is our hockey player's modern caveman, which actually has been academically written about in real life. And so I just had I love book research. I'm such a nerd that way. I love to go down the rabbit hole of books research. And so one of my favorite things to find out, and I even put it in the book, was that even on cave paintings. So, think of the long-term history of cave paintings and how far they go back. Even on cave paintings, male appendages are enlarged. I just laughed because I thought this has been since the dawn of time. And so I love that one of the early reviewers actually understood that this talked about like intellectualism, but it also talked about male aggression, and it talked about the outlet that sports brings. Because hockey really, the genesis of it really was to try to go and have outlets for military people and soldiers who were in Canada around the Revolutionary War, sort of around that time. And they were actually pitting different groups against each other to fight through this sport because there were some downtime. I was fascinated by that, especially with my background, right?
Yes.
There was a lot of extra fun that went into it, despite the fact that it's a funny rom-com with a crazy, wacky premise. And a really crazy cover.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Caveman, strongman kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And again, this is so much insight, and I was finding that there's all of these little nuggets of research, of fact, of relevance to our lives falls into this. So it's a rom-com, but boy, there's just a lot of grittiness or really meatiness, I guess, in it, in the sense of having that information.
Yeah. And I mean, something that I really love because it's how I think, I often analyze those types of situations. I mean, some of it's hardwired, I think, into me, but also some of it is analyzing people and trying to figure out how they're motivated as someone who did conflict resolution and negotiation. You always need to understand people's backgrounds and motivations, and what they're really looking for and what are they hiding from themselves to sort of see, what their resistance points are and all of that jazz. And so, being able to show field notes in the book, as these women are, basically observing this hockey team, was a lot of fun for me because, some of it, and also relating it to their work in the Congo, where, it's kind of like their version of like being able to look at a group that's been, very kept away from technology, for example, and the like. And so being able to say, a tape sticking, or no, wait. Taping your stick. Sorry, I was like, how do I say that? Yeah. Taping your hockey stick, it's like a male initiation sort of rite, exactly. And it's like something that warriors would do before they would go out and hunt. And so I think some of the parallels are very fascinating, especially as I think we continue to grapple with what does male aggression look like. Hockey is considered one of the most violent sports out there. And I think a lot of us, kind of wonder like, all right, let's talk about channeling some of that into fair play, into rules, kind of like sports do. It serves a very important function. And talking about that from the researcher's perspective, I thought was going to be also very funny. Because there's that other dynamic.
There are those moments that are laugh out loud funny as I'm reading and finding some of these things. I can't believe this. This is just hilarious. So yes, definitely fun. And then bringing into it to the other side of it, the figure skating, and just how we all love watching that with the Olympics. And we, little girls, I think, so often grow up, they want to be that, figure skater going to the Olympics. But you give us a really good, angle on that too, as to what it means to a person, what it can do to a person.
Yeah, I think especially for Val as a woman, it was a lot of pressure as a young girl to
Mm.
perform. I mean, she talked about being trained to smile through anything, a rude comment from someone who was interviewing her in the press, for example, or, someone who shouted something out at her. And so I think, internalizing that and the fact that ended up hurting her health, that there's a lot of pressure that we put on, think, young kids sometimes when it comes to that type of a stage and that type of a performance. And I thought it was a nice contrast so that the hero, she actually understood the hero and what he was going through as an athlete and with that type of pressure, although he didn't actually know it at the time, fully why, that she always kind of got him. And I liked that they both had respect and understood each other, because I think equanimity in a relationship is it's a key to happily ever after, as far as I'm concerned. And it's not something we talk about enough.
Right. And so here in a rom-com for a summer read, and any time of the year read, but it just happens to be available now, and it's summertime and we're looking for more reading material, I think. So here we have this really delightful and really educational, informative book, which you wouldn't necessarily think would be the case, but wow, it's just chock full. And you're just underscoring all of that for us, Ava.
Yeah, well, it's something that I love, and it's also something that my readers love. I love hearing from readers that they always learn something from my
Mm,
books,
yeah.
and some of that's because I do characters. I mean, this is everyone's saying this is not a normal hockey book. It isn't. I don't really do. I mean, like I'm always writing something weird and original because I have had some, experiences that just kind of are different and off the beaten track that most people don't. And so I find, like my first hero was a war zone journalist, for example, who's coming back from Afghanistan burnt out. And, he had a very interesting point of view. And, there were ones that of course, I knew, but also I was kind of that burnout person coming back from overseas. So in some respects, I understood him very, very well. But it gives people like a lot of insight into people that they don't necessarily know, which is really great. But at the same time, it's something that they're like, oh, I took away like such an incredible thing about this. And I'm hoping people take away like the head and the heart part, like how much we are influenced by our physiology during the time when we're falling in love with someone. Because sometimes we're like, oh gosh, why am I feeling this way about this guy, right? Or this woman, however you want to say it. And so I think that's a nice thing because the science behind it is there, and it's not something that we're always taught
And I
in biology school.
I well, I never did take biology in school, but it's not taught there. And so it was fascinating. I thought, oh my gosh, there's a lot of information here. She's really done a lot of research on this. Well, again, the researcher in you would do that, but just your awareness and mentioning because you have dozens of books, over 60,
Yes.
right? Yes.
Yes.
That was just amazing to me. That's the prolific writer in you, the author. And to bring us, it's really, it gives us food for thought. Well, you were mentioning the returning correspondent from Afghanistan. We know this happens, but we never have the opportunity to really understand a person like that. Bringing a character into a book really is so important to us to really have a better sense of ourselves and them in our world, to really be able to relate to each other better.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the greatest things about stories and about fiction. I mean, in fact, it's hard sometimes when you're negotiating with someone during conflict, they can't hear you because they have this block, they have this wall. But if you tell them a story about somebody that they don't think they know, and suddenly they have empathy for that person and they understand where that person's coming from, that would change a mediation or a negotiation in a way that sometimes you couldn't even like foresee. And so I think that that's the nice thing about fiction, is that the stories that we read about people that we may not know, or the people that we actually do know, for example, that we're really close to and we don't quite see the reasons that they do things, the stories unpack it in a way that our imagination allows us to sort of fly a little bit, and the plot allows us to dream a little bit, and we're able to get insights into people, into lives, and sometimes in our own circumstances about ourselves and our families that I think are just absolutely invaluable. And so I love stories for that. I mean, I'm a storyteller at heart because of that. It's a sacred gift, and it's something that I'm so grateful to be able to do for myself, but also as a living.
Perfect. A perfect case of really following your bliss and being able to, as you do that, to help others hopefully realize that for themselves, but at the very least, really in learning about other people, also learning more about ourselves. I mean, it's so wonderful. Yes, stories rule. They're so great. So, this is so great. The Hockey Experiment, of course, is the new book. So we're really excited to be able to get that. It's certainly available at all of our favorite bookstores these days, correct?
Yeah, it's mostly with Amazon and Barnes and Noble. The Kindle Unlimited universe is like so huge now. And so I wanted to make sure that it was accessible to that audience, especially because it is the biggest book universe in the world now. And it is an unbelievable sort of feat.
Wonderful. So there's that. And then you are on all the various socials. So anyone can find you basically anywhere, which is great because, as I have found in our conversations this morning, you are so amazing and wonderful. And I want people to find you and get your books and learn about you and follow you and all that good stuff.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such a gift. Being connected to new readers and to people that, love my work and love the positivity that I always embody because that's who I am as a person. I always say, feel good in life, feel good in books. And so my platforms have that type of a vibe. And so, come join us and celebrate other people living a positive existence because I think that we need more positivity in the world.
Yes. And it's available. We have that choice. Yeah. So here we have a choice to, like with the Hockey Experiment, be entertained, be informed, be educated, be surprised, have fun, and then explore more of the books as I will now do because I'm now aware of you, Ava Miles.
Oh, I'm so happy for that, Kate. Thank you so much. It's such a joy.
Well, you are a joy. I am so grateful that I had this opportunity that, I got an email saying, oh, here's a book. Would you be interested in speaking with the author? And yes, I am so glad I said yes. And here we are and we're sharing it with others. So who knows where all of that reaches, but it's very exciting to think about that.
I think so too. I think so too, especially when we're trying to inspire other people. It's like there's inspirational angels that just sort of go out and it's like, yes, isn't that wonderful? Spread the word.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, this has been great fun. I so appreciate you and all that you're doing for all of us, beginning with yourself, taking care of yourself, and you can't help but exude that and want that for others. So, you're such an inspiration. Thank you so greatly for your time today.
Well, thank you, like I said, for being you and to talk to women like you do. And so being such someone who loves to go and interview and talk about, how wonderful we all can be because, you're obviously so wonderful too. And it was such a joy to talk to you. So thank you so very much.
You're so welcome. Thank you for being here this morning to meet these amazing guests and learn about their work. From practical to entertaining, they're doing important work in our world. Please check this station's website for the podcasts for more information about these guests, and please share the stories with your family and friends. I'm Kate Daniels. If you'd like to connect with me, simply send me an email, katedaniels@hubbardradio.com. Now, have a wonderful summer-like day.
Thank you for listening to Inspirational Women. Tune in every Sunday morning at this time to hear about those truly empowering the Northwest community, all for the greater good. Sunday Morning Magazine and Inspirational Women are a public service of Hubbard Radio Seattle.